Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /malicious compliance, where people follow orders to the letter to spite someone. And in today's episode, we've got Karens raging around Christmas time, bosses going on power trips, and Opie tells a fantastic story about the time he and his coworker taught a nasty Karen a lesson she won't forget. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I used to work at a cable company many years ago. Christmas time was the worst because customers would call in complaining that they can't pay their TV bill. Because of course, it's taking Christmas away from my child. And how could I be such a mean and uncaring evil person? The thing is, when every third call is like this, I stopped caring 2 days after Halloween. One of these parents called in on a late December day, wanting to know why they not only had to pay their $145 bill this Christmas season, but why we expected them to pay for 7 adult pay-per-view movies as well, all starting at $13.99. This upset Karen's yelling at me, when all of a sudden I hear this. She says, "Lisa, you get here right now." She then says to me, I want you to tell my daughter why she's not getting an effing Christmas this year. Go on, tell her." Hearing that, I start to protest, letting her know that this is absolutely not necessary. But she screams, "I said, do it. Tell my daughter why Christmas is effing canceled this year for her." So I get this girl on the phone who sighs as her mother dearest walks into the other room. She then says to me, "Hey, let me guess, you want to tell me something?" I tell her, "Yeah, I hate to tell you this, but your mother has overspent herself, and you probably aren't gonna get anything for Christmas." The child says to me, "Yeah, mom never ever pays the bills. I'm sorry, you aren't the first person she's done this to, but you are the first one who hasn't fed lies to me, so thanks." That's when I tell her, "Well, Lisa, don't let these things define who you become in life. The only one who can stop you is yourself. Not me, not even your mother. Remember that." The child says to me, "Thanks, mom's coming back, and don't worry, I get Christmas with my neighbors, so I'm good." Mom picks back up the phone and says, "So now are you going to cancel my bill?" Apparently she's been getting her service credited using this tactic. To which I say to her, "Nope. You still owe us a minimum of $150 before we can reinstate your account." She then screams at me and says, "You're heartless, taking Christmas away from my little angel." And then she hung up. You know what? The only person taking Christmas away from your angel, Karen, is yourself. But absolutely wild, right? How people automatically assume that they're exempt from bills because Christmas time. And it does suck to know that OP wasn't the only one. Like, that mom was having her daughter talk to everybody about not paying the bills. With that said, it is nice to hear that that girl had her head on straight, and I wish her all the best in the future. Hopefully she sees what mom does and she doesn't follow in that path. Also, in my opinion, if Mother Karen didn't spend $100 on those adult pay-per-view movies, maybe she'd have money to pay that cable bill, thus saving Christmas, but who knows? Okay, so this is a story from almost a decade ago, when I was assistant service manager for a large chain grocery store. Our day-to-day responsibilities included making sure each department was getting their work completed, the shelves were staying stocked, cashiering when necessary, counting money and making change for the registers, and most importantly to this story, approving returns. I worked super hard to get that position by learning the ins and outs of the store and picking up shifts in every single department. When I was promoted to the position, I was the youngest in company history to reach that level. And I don't mean that as a brag, but just to illustrate that I did know what I was talking about on a lot of things. But I was so young that many people didn't take me seriously. So like I mentioned before, it was my job to approve returns. If a customer brought in something for a return, the cashier would do all the work for the return, including checking for receipts, figuring out what the problem was, and determining how they could make it a better experience for the customer. That might be an exchange, store credit, refund, etc. They would then call me over at the end of the exchange, and I would check to make sure it was all in order. I would insert a key, type in a code, and the return would go through. Now, I would like to think that I was a reasonable person when it came to what I would approve and not approve. If somebody came back with spoiled food, I almost always gave them the benefit of the doubt that they stored it right and it was a faulty product. And spoiler alert, it's almost always their fault. If someone didn't like the taste of something, I would always do a return. Even when something was slightly past the expiration date, I would try to work with them and maybe give them an exchange or something. Where I drew the line was absolutely ridiculous things. People would come in without a receipt or the product, and they would try to get a return, saying something like, "I got something here, it was bad, so I threw it away. I'd like a return." And that's when I would say, "Sorry, I'm not going to do that." Also, if you bring in something that we don't even sell at the store, I'm obviously not going to return it for you. Now, like I said before, I was young at the time, so a lot of older adults wouldn't take me seriously. They couldn't understand how somebody so young could be the manager they wanted to speak to. So one day, this irate customer wants to speak to a manager about a return. So my cashier called me, and I do my best to figure out how I can help them. I want a return on chicken that was 3 months expired, and it smelled exactly like you would expect. My cashier was almost dry heaving from the stench. So I say, in my best customer service voice, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I won't be able to do a return on this. It's obviously way past the expiration date. If you would like, we can dispose it for you." And she wouldn't have any of it. She's now yelling how she deserves a refund. Now, we had cameras in the store, so the store director sees all the commotion and he comes out from his office to quote, "save the day." Please read this as sarcastically as you can. So he comes out and he tells the woman, "Oh, I'm so sorry that he was saying we can't refund this. Of course we'll give you a refund." Now, the thing didn't even have a barcode, so he had no idea what it cost. But he gave the lady a $20 gift card to the store right there. And I'm fuming at this point because he just made me look like a powerless idiot in front of a bunch of customers. But we were so busy, so I keep doing my job. About an hour later, he calls me into his office, and I would type out the whole conversation, but it's pointless. Basically, it boils down to him telling me multiple times that I was not allowed to say no to a return, that I was to approve all returns because customer satisfaction is more important than some lost revenue, blah 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 blah. So I think it's the stupidest thing ever, but I'm a good employee, and I like getting paid. So I kept my mouth shut. Now, you can all figure out where this goes. Fast forward a few weeks, and a customer comes in. So during Christmas time, we sold these little 2-foot tall Christmas trees in small pots. It was now June. This lady wanted to return her Christmas tree that now made Charlie Brown's tree look full and healthy. The thing didn't have a single needle on it, and the trunk was rotting. Now, normally, I would tell her in the most polite way that there was no way in hell I would do a refund. But I had specific instructions though, and I was sure as heck going to follow them. As part of the return, and while trying not to laugh, I asked her why she wanted to return it. She told me flat out, "Well, this tree didn't do what I was expecting it to." Now, I don't know what she expected, but I personally don't buy a Christmas tree thinking it's gonna live forever. I complete the return though, and I send her on her way. So where did I take that Christmas tree, you might ask? If you guessed straight to the director's desk for him to find the next morning, you would be a winner. I had the next day off, but I left a nice note for him that explained the whole situation. The next day when I came back, he immediately calls me in. Now, I was expecting the worst because leaving it on his desk with a note was a little aggressive. But all he said to me was, "Maybe from now on, you can say no sometimes. Just use your best judgment." It was one of the greatest victories ever, and it took all my self-restraint to not say something sarcastic, how that should have been the case the whole time. Man, I have no idea what OP's boss was thinking when they gave that woman a refund on a tray of rancid chicken breast. Like, is that a thing that happens? Like, if I was the manager, that is like the last thing I would refund a customer. And honestly, I have a feeling that this was a total power-tripping move to show young OP who was in charge. Because what manager would say yes to a rotten tray of chicken, but then draws the line at a dead tree? And this person says, "The refund everything, customer service is our world," is nice. But you end up attracting the quality of customer who will try to refund everything, and they're not good business. Customers are supposed to make, not cost you money. They're not customers you want, so F service. So with Christmas rolling around and various stores offering fresh cut trees for sale, this story always pops back up in my memory, and it's so hard not to laugh as I write it. Hopefully, this case of malicious compliance will have you smiling, as much as the memory of it makes me smile. So at the time, I was working as a head cashier at one of the big box stores. It was December, some weeks before Christmas, and tree sales were on offer. It was approaching our closing, and as per policy for that store, once night fell, we would close our garden center. Any purchases, trees included, had to go through the front. Now, since the garden center was closed already, this meant there were no cashiers on hand. Cashiers being the people who were in charge of loading up trees for customers. About 15 minutes or so before the store locks the doors, a lady who I'll call Karen wheels into the store, and she rushes up to the garden center, rattling the chain link gates. This prompts one of the floor guys to direct her up front. We find out that Karen needs a tree, like right now. And the way she was acting, you would have thought that there was a golden ticket or something in that tree. Or it was announced that live Christmas trees were a limited source and there was only like 1 or 2 left in the world. The lady was frantic. Johnny, the manager who was handling closing that day, dutifully rings Karen up, and then he turns to me and says, "Do you mind helping me with loading this tree?" Now, Johnny didn't need the help, but he was the kind of manager who recognized when somebody needed a break from dealing with customers. So at this, I nod, and I tell the other cashier that I was heading off to help with the tree, and to call me over my company phone if I was needed for anything, really. So we head out, and the lady's already picked a tree she wanted, the largest we had. Johnny and I then do the usual of trimming the tree's base with a chainsaw, and then wrapping the tree in funky netting, and then telling her to bring the car over and we'd put it on the roof. Karen goes and does this, and this is where the fun begins. Johnny and I could apparently do nothing right. It didn't matter how we suggested tying the tree to the roof of her car, it wasn't good enough. Eventually, we get Karen to agree to a compromise. She rolls down the windows on the passenger side of her car, and we loop the nylon tie-down rope around the door and post, and then cinch it tight and let her roll the windows back up. Then we head to the other side of the car, and we stood there trying to sort out the best way to finish the tie-down job. And that's when Karen says, "Just tie it like you did the other side, it's not rocket science." At that, Johnny says, that's not a good idea. Karen says, "I don't care. You haven't done anything right, and I need to get home right now." At this point, I chime in, and I try to tell her, "Yeah, he's actually trying to tell you." Karen then stops me right there, and she says, "The customer is always right. Now do what I said." At this point, Johnny looks at me. I look at him, and we shrug. So the lady rolls down the driver's side windows, and we start tying the tree down. This is when Karen says, "And make sure it's tight. I don't want this coming off. I'm going to the freeway." So we think, okay, tight it is. So we pull the rope so tight that it was bordering on denting the door of her car. We then cinch everything down and put one hell of a knot to keep everything together. My old Boy Scout leader would have been proud. At this point, Karen seems satisfied. She rolls up her car windows and drives off. Johnny and I are watching as she turns out of the parking lot. And that's when I look at him and ask, "So how long do you think it'll take her to realize that the way we tied it, she can't get out of her car now?" Johnny just shrugs and says, "You know what? The customer's always right, remember?" He says that with a dopey smile, and we head back inside to do final closing. So for those that don't get it, we didn't tie it around the doorpost. We tied it around the closed doors through the window, tight enough that neither the driver's side nor the passenger side doors could be opened. And there is something of an epilogue to the story. The next day, I'm doing my thing when I see Johnny and the store manager talking about something. The store manager, Clyde, is laughing so hard that he has tears down his face. Johnny sees me and he waves me over, and this is where I get the rest of the story. So I find out that Karen called our corporate's complaint line to complain how 2 idiots at our store had trapped her inside her car when they tied a Christmas tree to the roof of it. She didn't get their names, but she thought it was something like Trevor or Sam or something. And she had to call the fire department to come out to cut the rope to get her out from the vehicle. And Karen was pissed, royally pissed. She wanted those two fired for what they had done. And here's the thing. The woman wasn't overweight or anything. She could have easily climbed out of the window. The report came down to Clyde, who had no idea what was going on, much less who the hell these two employees were, as those weren't anyone who worked at the store. Corporate chalked it up to an irate customer and told him to not worry about it. He was talking with Johnny about the weird complaint, and that's when Johnny relayed the story of what had really happened. I was called over to act as his witness. Clyde was beside himself. He laughed so hard at this lady's stupidity, so much so that whenever he heard a call for someone to help with a Christmas tree sale, he would burst into fits of laughter or giggles. No punishment came from that, as he figured we'd done exactly what the lady wanted, and we had tried to warn her that it wasn't a good idea. I would see the lady in the store from time to time after that, and she made a point to not look at me, or she would scuttle off to another aisle. Yeah, I just can't believe that woman called the fire department for that, guys. Like, freaking hilarious. But yeah, she should have humiliated herself by crawling out of the back seat or window like a regular person. Like, do it like the rest of us. But who knows, maybe she called the firefighters because she needed concrete proof and a report to fire those measly employees who apparently trapped her inside of her car. And one more thing, this is why I keep a pocket knife in my car, guys, mainly for emergencies, but also in case I ever do something silly like this. So I love taking photos of people, to the point that I have 2 resumes for applying for jobs, and one of them is specifically for photography work. So I was psyched when I got a job in a photo studio. It was a chain, and it wasn't like high quality work, but it was awesome. I took a lot of photos of very cute babies in particular. Well, this company had a 3-strike policy. Once there were 3 issues with you, you were gone, and they made you sign off on every single one of the reports. It didn't matter how much later it was that you got your next strike. They never went away. So that doesn't sound like a great business model, but okay. And being fair, I did get 2 strikes which were very reasonable. One day, I missed work because I forgot to set an alarm. It was a super irregular schedule, and it wasn't always easy to keep track of. My fault. The next strike happened because I scheduled a photo shoot for before the beginning of a shift, accidentally. Now, the last strike. I actually got 2 on the same day. Around Christmas, our store goes nuts. We have to have twice as many people working in order to keep everything in order. During that, I was training a new employee, helping her with photo shoots and my own, running cash, taking passport photos, and teaching her the rules for them. And it was a nightmare. What made it worse is that one Karen submitted 2 complaints that day about me. See, this customer felt like I was pushing her to buy photos, and literally, all this company cares about is pushing the photo packages. And I was instructed relentlessly to do it more, and with more energy, because I didn't make enough people feel like they had to have them. So great, I convinced a customer to spend money, instead of just giving them free things and not getting $1 from them, like the company was always yelling at me to do. And yes, I got a complaint for that. Great. The other complaint was even more ludicrous. The customer felt that I was being too bossy with the other photographer, the one I was training, the one that didn't know how to do the job yet, so I had to tell her how to do things. Apparently, I deserved to be fired for telling her how to do things. So yeah, I was fired and I was heartbroken. It's been a few years now, so I've gotten over it, but I was so happy working as a photographer. But here's where the malicious compliance comes in. You see, by my nature, I end up doing a lot of work that isn't actually my job, because I want to help. I enjoy feeling useful, but they're firing me because they don't want me to sell things or train people like they told me to do. So for the last 2 weeks of my job, I stopped counting all the money for the deposits. That was the manager's job, even though she hadn't done it in half a year since making me do it. This meant that she had to come in on days that she didn't work, just to do the deposit. I also stopped actively recruiting customers, which is what you're supposed to do in your downtime. I also stopped taking meticulous notes of every interaction that was worth following up on. I used to make a note for the next shift how X customer seemed interested but was unconvinced, and that a simple reminder of the offer would probably be enough to get them to buy. Or I would make a note how somebody forgot their passport photos and whether or not they had paid already. And then on my last day, the truest malicious compliance happened. They wanted me gone. So I took my name tag and packed it away. I then went to the photo studio and grabbed the kids' toys I'd brought in to help get the young ones to cooperate. I also cleaned up all of the things I'd laid out neatly for easy preparation and put them back into storage. I then cleaned up the counters to get rid of all of the notes and passport photos that weren't claimed that day, because that's what we were technically supposed to do. And then came the real part. Over my 9 months working there, a number of issues had come up with the things we worked with. For the passport photos, we needed a paper trimmer to slice off the edges quickly and neatly. We had one when I started, and then it broke. I bought a replacement. That got broken too, and still we needed one. So I brought in another replacement. We had also gotten our stapler stolen, but no worries, I had one at home we could use. And the keys to the storage, the extra receipt paper, the passport paper, where we keep the deposits, where we keep our paper files, they were tiny. And the color of them was so bland that throughout the course of the day, they would get lost easily 30 times. I had brought a large blue fluffy keychain to attach it to with permission from the boss. We never lost the keys again, not one of us. We also had a sign that when I started there, we could pop out that said, "I'm in a photo shoot. Please be patient, I'll be with you in a moment," or something along those lines. Well, my boss accidentally dumps her coffee on that sign when she tripped one day. So I went out of the way to get a new one printed, bought a plastic sleeve for it, and set it up with a cardboard backing so it wouldn't break or get ruined. It was way better than the old one. So of course, when I left, I took my sign, my keychain, my paper trimmer, my stapler, my toys, and notably my shutter button. You see, the camera had a shutter button attached that would allow you to move about while snapping photos. This cord had gotten frayed and not replaced, and it shocked me enough to leave a nasty burn, so I took it off the camera and brought my own in. I left with all of that stuff. I got a call the next day asking how dare I steal the company's supplies. I calmly replied that I'd just taken back the items that belonged to me, and that they could keep the broken paper trimmer I brought in. I even left them a pair of scissors I brought for backup when the first paper cutter broke. After I left, the store closed down not 2 months later. It's crazy how when you fire your hardest worker over things you told them to do, other employees are less than enthused about the chance of the same thing happening. And no one else worked nearly as hard to keep everything going like I did. And for reference, the employee who the customer felt I was treating badly looked at our manager like she was insane and asked when I had done that because she knew for a fact the only time I raised my voice at her was because it was too loud for her to hear me otherwise. She apologized to me and she said she was worried it was her fault because she had been a little nervous that day. And she was worried that the customer had gotten the wrong impression because of that. Said employee then went on to have her own gallery show, leaving shortly after I was fired. Guys, stories like this make me so angry. Like, how could the manager not see that OP was basically their star employee that kept the show going? And the 3 strikes thing is so dumb, especially since they never go away. Like, are you going to tell me that I could get 2 strikes, have a perfect record for the next 10 years, and then get fired because some Karen gets angry one day? That is beyond absurd. And all I can say is good frickin' riddance. Places like that get what they deserve in the end. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's on our /entitled people episode, where OP's own mom wants $700,000 for birthing her. It's such a wild story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.